you know, there is a lot of burden we are already putting on individual users, consumers, citizens to take a lot of action. And I think the one thing I would disagree with is that, you know, there also needs to be a concerted push to try and improve the obligations that entities that access your data are under, right? There are no, you know, actually this is might be a controversial statement for some, but I don't believe there are good laws or bad laws. There are laws which are badly made. There are laws which are ill-intentioned, but there can also be good laws because the RTI, for instance. So I think just like we can't talk about data in the abstract, we can't talk about law in the abstract, the state in the abstract, and so on. There are many state interests at play. There are many private sectors interests at play. There are various laws. I think one constructive way to move forward is actually improve the set of obligations that companies have when they're accessing your data, right? So if you look at the EU General Data Protection Regulation, which is, I would say, the gold standard in data protection worldwide, and what a lot of countries look to, they actually have a centralized government agency called a Data Protection Agency, which is set up to safeguard users' rights. And those DPAs then have monitor other companies so that once you've given your data up, it's very hard for you to understand how it's being used. So I think along with people being very active and trying to think more about their information and how they are sharing it, I think it's also important to have a concerted push for regulation on entities that are accessing your data, right? And to use law to try and put some kind of obligations and restraints, because that's actually an important role that the law can play in terms of introducing a cost to data misuse. Currently, it's like it's cheap, it's easy, and it's costless to cause a privacy risk. And unfortunately or fortunately, the one thing that industry does respond to is regulation. But we need to be careful about using that regulation in a way that we can actually implement it and create a kind of positive data culture, say that certain other countries which are much smaller than us are able to create, both in terms of size and in terms of effectiveness. So I'm thinking about similar countries like South Africa, Brazil, for instance. We're all going through this at the same time. They're also passing laws. They're also trying to make companies take responsibilities, or state take responsibility for how it manages your data. So I'd say that's the big push that I think as civil society and as citizens you can make is to, that's why I actually think the law is important. So I might be the sole person here who actually thinks the data protection bill is very important. Actually, I don't think it should be trivialized. Yeah.
I said it, right, that you need to use the state and make laws. So you oppose the state by making the state more powerful sometimes. And one way of doing that is laws. So I actually completely agree with you. In fact, I would say that in this particular thing, one of the main goals of any such mass agitation or mass movement should be the creation of law, improvement of existing laws. One of very concrete things you could do is just compare the recent draft of the bill with what was originally proposed, and then have very specific demands on those deviations which you want rolled back on, and you want the actual bill as it was. GDPR has been extremely important in Europe in these kind of fights. And we need battle lines in laws here very immediately. So yes, you need to come out on the street, and the purpose of your coming out on the street shouldn't be limited to, but definitely should have legislation as one of its goals. And the way you make legislation happen is by politicizing it so that political parties care enough to have legislations. I actually have very thoughts which might sound contradictory, but they're not really if you think about it.
One point that, you are with a government which is able to introduce new law at the drop of a hat without discussion. It's able to, where previous governments probably spent 5 years in getting a bill through parliament because there was an opposition. Today, these guys are able to get through a bill and 3 amendments in one session of parliament. You've had 110 amendments going through in one session. So I'm not sure just having a law which this kind of political formation is going to pass is going to make any sense at all.
On the Section 35 point, yeah, I mean, this is a problematic provision. I think there are multiple things you can do. So there is a consultation window open now for the Joint Parliamentary Committee. So you can actually write in as an individual citizen with your public consultation response to the JPC. So just look it up, the Lok Sabha Secretariat Joint Parliamentary Committee on Data Protection. Obviously, many people will be writing in, we will as well, but it's an important public consultation process. I think there will be people who will challenge this provision in court if it is passed in the current way.